Hello and welcome to a Geek First Sidequest bonus episode. It is just me, Dylan, here today to cast my Game Awards votes. So this is going to be a fun process of me just talking through the different categories and explaining my picks. This is not going to be a prediction episode because about a week and a half, 2 weeks from now, me, Taylor, Travis, and Kirkland are all going to convene, and we're all going to do our predictions as we normally do. And, also me and Taylor did a brief, just kind of our reactions looking at the list, but this is going to be me going through the different categories here and talking about my vote. So it's going to be a fun time here. I haven't done this before. I always vote, but I've never done a cast talking about my specific votes. I wanted to start by just kind of explaining how, or at least how I understand the Game Awards to work. So I'm going to share my screen here on YouTube. If not, I'll explain everything here. But the way the Game Awards works is that there are a bunch of outlets. Think about like your IGNs of the world, or even more podcast content people like a Kind of Funny. And all these different outlets can submit, I believe, 5 games per category. So for Game of the Year, they would pick their top 5 games. It's unranked as far as I know. And then all of those votes get accumulated between all these different outlets, of which there's like 100 of them. Looking at them here, you can see just most of them are from the U.S. Well, not even most of them, but a good chunk are from the U.S., but all over worldwide, all sorts of like Argentina's in here, like Brazil's got like, oh my God, Brazil has a good like 8 different outlets. I was also, this is a very Canadian thing, I was shocked to see that the CBC is here. I won't explain why that's weird to me, but if you are from Canada and you didn't know that, you'd probably also be like, what? CBC has a ballot for this? I should reach out to CBC, see if I can, weasel my way in there and cast votes that way. So anyway, all of these outlets come together, well, separately. They submit their 5 ballots per category. Some of the categories might be a bit different, like esports is kind of done by a separate crew and whatnot. And then all of the numbers are accumulated there. And then whatever is just the top 5 or maybe even more most popular games, then those become the nominees. And then at that stage, to get from the nominees to what actually wins is once again just taking all those same votes, but then adding a 10% fan vote in there. So just like me going on here and submitting my votes, everyone else in the world can do this as well, either on the Game Awards website, or I think they also do it like through a Discord server. You submit your votes there, and then that will account for 10% of the vote. So things could change slightly, perhaps, from what the nominees originally are to what it ends up being. So also, I didn't really realize why there's sometimes 5 or why there's sometimes 6, but I guess if there's ever 6 games in a category, that's because there was a tie. Presumably, that would be the tie like for that 5th slot specifically, because if there was a tie for any other slot, then I guess they would just, whatever the 5th ranked one would just get kicked out at that point. So that obviously happens a lot, and seems for Game of the Year, it seems to happen more often than not, and I think that is maybe comes down to the popularity contest element of it. But yeah, with that, let's get into this here. Once again, I'm not making my prediction for what I think is going to win here. I am picking my personal vote, and there's a couple ways you could do this, right? You could really look at it and just pick what your favorite game is of the pack, or you could really you could use your vote even though it might be meaningless. I don't know how many people do this, if it's tens of thousands or 100,000 or more. I mean, millions of people watch the Game Awards, but I don't know how many people actually spend the time to go in here and vote. And you could also just vote for one category or all 31. You can really pick and choose which ones you want to do. So obviously my individual vote has very little power, but the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to pick my personal favorite of the group. I'm not going to look at it as like, oh, I want this thing to win, so I'm going to put a vote on it. That might happen in a couple categories if I haven't played many of the games, but otherwise I'm going to just try and pick my personal favorite. That's the way I want to do this personally, because I don't really believe in that whole, like with the Oscars and stuff, like, oh, this thing's going to win Best Picture, so we'll give them this award over here. I don't really like that. I think we should just individually, in a vacuum, pick what is the best thing of each category, not factoring in all these other things. So we're going to start with the big dog, and we're going to go all the way through this. Game of the Year, the 6 nominees this year are Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So looking at this right off the hop, I have not played Baldur's Gate 3 or Spider-Man 2. I don't have a PS5, so I can't play Spider-Man 2. And then Baldur's Gate 3, I'm just waiting for it to hit Xbox. It sounds like that's going to happen sooner rather than later, but I feel like they've been teasing that for like 3 or 4 months at this point. So I don't know when it's coming out, but I am very, very excited to pick that up when it does hit Series X. But for now, I can't vote, and I'm not going to consider those ones. I'm going to remove them from my contention here. So it comes down to Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. If I had to guess right off the bat, I was very shocked to see Resident Evil 4 make it in here just because I feel like there wasn't a ton of people talking about it. I was also surprised to see Mario Wonder make it in the list here. Not because it's a bad game, I just feel like this is such a freaking heavy year of games, like a Final Fantasy 16 or an Armored Core 6 or a Sea of Stars or other indie things. I'm just kind of surprised Mario Wonder beat those things out and is considered a top 6. But what I was going to say is, if I had to guess, based on how this tie works, once again, I don't know if the tie could be for like the game of the year is tied from the nominees, and then they would include a 6th at that point, or if it's just that 5th slot, if that gets tied, and they put 2 in there. If that is how it works, I would assume Resident Evil 4 and Mario Wonder were the 2 tied for that 5th spot, and so they both ended up making it in, which is pretty crazy because I feel like there's a few categories that have 6 games in there, so I guess ties happen more often than one might expect. Going through this, I love Mario Wonder. I'm having a great time with it. I think it'll probably make it in the lower end of my top 10. I don't really think it has any place here. For what I mentioned, not even just, I haven't played like Armored Core, so I'm not going to speak as to whether that should get in over Mario Wonder. But I just don't think it's on the caliber of some of the rest of these games. So that one is going to be discounted from my voting here. And then Tears of the Kingdom, kind of a weird one, and especially with the way we've talked about here on Sidequest, I was the only one who ended up picking it up in the Geekverse squad here, so it's only been talked about a bit. And I was also late because the game came out like the day I went to Europe for a month, so I got back late and started playing it. I don't know what it was about the game, but I kind of bounced off of it. I probably have a good like 15, 20 hours in it. I don't know if it's just the similarity of Breath of the Wild. Like, it's obviously doing a bunch of new and creative things, but I think some of my biggest complaints were like combat or the quality of the shrines and the structure of some of that stuff from Breath of the Wild, and I feel like none of those things were changed in the game. And it truly felt like, I've mentioned this before, but it kind of felt like in a Bethesda game when I roll a new character and I have a new build and the game feels new and fun because of that. That's what Tears of the Kingdom felt like for me. It felt like DLC to Breath of the Wild, and I think it just didn't blow me away. So obviously there's a lot more I haven't seen of it because I don't know how long it is. I spent, I think, 70 hours in Breath of the Wild. So if that's the same thing for Tears of the Kingdom, there's still a lot more for me to do. But I think that one too will probably crack into the lower end of my top 10 for my ranking, but it's not going to be my winner here. And I'm also going to say this, I don't want to spoil my Game of the Year list because, of course, in December we're going to be doing that. But my current, on my power ranking right now, my number 1 and 2, my Game of the Year and my runner-up, are not in this top 6. So it becomes a bit interesting where it isn't an immediate click on just, okay, well, that is my Game of the Year, so I'm just going to click it and we move on. Instead, I really have to work through it here. So obviously, with how we've talked about this, it's coming down to Resident Evil 4 and Alan Wake 2 for me. And this is a really, really tricky decision because Alan Wake 2, I think I'm about 6 hours into it, but I still have so much more to see. If I feel like if it stays on the trajectory that it is right now, then I could see it becoming like one of those top picks for me and being like my obvious pick here. But I don't know if I'm at that point today. Really, my only issue with Alan Wake 2 is, well, I had some bugs, which I talked about. I think a lot of that stuff's been patched, thankfully, already. Alan Wake 2, I'm not really digging the combat, but I just, last play session, bumped it down to easy or story mode, story difficulty, and have enjoyed the game. I've just been enjoying my time. There's less hiccups in that way. So it's cool. I was able to fix like one of my main issues by just disabling some of the difficulty elements of it. Not that it was that hard. I just feel like enemies move around so quick. You're kind of slow and sluggish. They go off screen all the time, so you can't like see where you're getting hit from. It's just a little janky. So I don't know. Maybe if I play the game again, I'd bump up the difficulty again. But then Resident Evil 4, I guess I feel slightly weird because it is a remake. It's a really powerful remake. It's really well done. It's built from the ground up. So many things are changed. The Separate Ways DLC was really great and expansive. But there is still a little part of me that's like, wow, it's a remake though. Do I really want that to win Game of the Year? Ultimately, I think Resident Evil 4 has zero chance. I'll say zero chance of actually winning this award. Once again, not doing my full predictions here, but I'll say that at least. But if I have to go with my heart here on this recording day of November 17th, 2023, I'm going to go with Resident Evil 4 as my current pick. Once again, I think Alan Wake 2 could eclipse it, and I can always come back and change my votes later. I don't think I want to because I'm doing this cast here, so I want to stick with what I picked. But I love Resident Evil 4. I had so much fun with it. I had so much fun going back to it with that DLC pack. So for me, not an easy pick by any means. It kind of was a 50-50 coin toss, but I'm going to happily go with Resident Evil 4 as my vote. Let's move on to the next category here, which is taking a long time to load. It is best game direction. These are it's all the same games with the exception of Resident Evil 4 is taken out. So Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Mario Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom. Once again, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man, taking those out of my list. This is one of the probably easiest votes I'll have to do all day. Even if Resident Evil was still in here, or even if honestly my game of the year, my runner-up were in here, this would be the easiest vote for Alan Wake 2 I have ever seen in my life, because that game is so bold and weird. I think the mixed media element of having these live action recorded scenes that just flow like seamlessly into the game, mixed with like there's music videos that play when you finish chapters. The kind of TV show structure of it is really interesting. The fact that it has got a very interactive, or I guess I'll say immersive menu by having like the mind place be this location you go to, and that's where you're tracking down your clues and putting things up on the corkboard. It's just such a weird and interesting game, and visually it's doing so much that I haven't seen in games before, and it's like I cannot wait for people to... This game's obviously been very successful already, critically, and I hope sales-wise, and in the Game Awards, it's freaking everywhere, all over these categories. I can't wait for other studios to copy what Alan Wake is doing in many ways, or iterate on some of the ideas that they have here, because it is such a cool and creative game. I think Mario Wonder doing a couple new and fun things, but to me it's... Once again, this is even more shocking than Game of the Year that it's in game direction. I don't really see about Mario Wonder's direction that gets it into the list here. Tears of the Kingdom, I absolutely understand it for that. Just that building system alone of building these weird, freakish contraptions and vehicles. That's incredibly novel and miraculous that it works at all. So that's definitely more worthy to be here than ever. So once again, Alan Wake 2, easy vote for me. Next category is going to take us to Best Narrative. So we have Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, Final Fantasy 16, and Marvel Spider-Man 2. So a tricky one. I've only played Alan Wake out of the bunch here. So I'm going to have to go with Alan Wake 2. But also, the game's story is amazing. It's really interesting and weird, as I mentioned, but also you have these two characters. There's so many questions I have. It's a great mystery. The way it's tackling being a sequel as a narrative focus, I think, is really interesting from as the perspective of someone who played Alan Wake 1, but way back in the day and hasn't really thought about it much in the last decade. Really interesting stuff there. So I'm going to go with Alan Wake 2 for my personal pick. Next category is Best Art Direction. Here we have Alan Wake 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Mario Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom. So haven't played Lies of P. Looks, very Bloodborne-esque in gameplay, but also in the style to some extent. And then Hi-Fi Rush in here, I think, has a really, really great art style. Really cartoony and fun. I didn't love that game as much as the rest of the world, but art style and musically, I have to give the game credit for what it's doing there. Very cool. Mario Wonder, I don't think it's enough of a departure from the previous games in terms of art direction for me, although it does look very good and cute, and there's a lot of great animation work. I think that would be a big one for me too, is like when Luigi goes through a tube and his hat falls off and he sticks his arm back out and grabs it. All sorts of great stuff there. And then Tears of the Kingdom, in terms of the art direction, I've always been a little bit underwhelmed with the Breath of the Wild aesthetic. Honestly, I think the biggest part is just the limitations of the Switch hardware on what it's capable of doing. The frame rate is super choppy, but I also think some of the new elements like the Dark World that didn't necessarily blow me away, and I was really hoping that they would get more creative with some of the shrines and the art direction there. I don't necessarily love the art style of that one, so I'm going to discount that one. I think for this, it really does come down to Alan Wake 2 again and Hi-Fi Rush for me, because I think that game does look great as well. Very, very different styles. Alan Wake 2, of course, is more photorealistic. But man, I gotta say, in terms of just the environments, the lighting of Alan Wake, the kind of color palette, the way it'll take these like multiple scenes, and it's almost like loading two separate scenes at the same time and like overlapping them, and like you just get so tripped up because of how trippy this whole world is put together. So Alan Wake 2 is fucking cleaning up for me here. I'm getting another point on Alan Wake 2. You love to see it. Shout outs to Remedy. Next category is Score and Music. Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3. A lot of similarities here. Tears of the Kingdom again, Hi-Fi Rush, and Final Fantasy 16. I gotta say, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom hasn't blown me away musically. I like the subtlety of Breath of the Wild, but I don't know if I could even pinpoint some of the differences in music in this one. Once again, Final Fantasy, Baldur's Gate, discounting those. Hi-Fi Rush, I like the music, but don't love it. It's Alan Wake 2, baby. Again, so many points for Alan Wake 2. Once again, it's like, how is this not my game of the year vote? But I think it just, in all these individual categories, when you really break it down, Alan Wake 2 is so freaking strong. And I think the music in the game is great. Those cutscenes, or I guess those chapter end music videos that I mentioned, I love that music. I love to sit there after a set, even if I'm like, gearing to keep going and keep seeing the next story beat or next gameplay moment. I'll just sit there and breathe it in, spend a couple minutes listening to this music. So yeah, it definitely takes that for me as well. Next category. We are moving on to best audio design. We have Alan Wake 2, Dead Space, Hi-Fi Rush, Spider-Man 2, and Resident Evil 4. So of these, Dead Space and Spider-Man I haven't played. Dead Space is on Game Pass, actually, which is cool. So I do want to check that out. At some point I will. When it comes down to this one, I don't know if I am as passionate on any particular category of it. I think Resident Evil 4 and Alan Wake 2 both sound great to me, notably. But I think this is actually where I'm going to give the point to Hi-Fi Rush. The music, like I mentioned, maybe not my absolute favorite. Still good music. But I think the way the audio design works, the whole game it's a action rhythm game. And they absolutely nailed it. I think it's so immediately understandable, even though it is kind of this tricky concept, especially when you compare it to like Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is doing a similar idea. I feel like Hi-Fi Rush for me was immediately a lot more playable and understandable. And the way you just like really get into a groove playing that game is fantastic. So I'm going to definitely put my vote on to that one for audio design here. We got best performance up next. We have Ben Starr for Final Fantasy 16. Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the great Cal Kestis. Idris Elba for Cyberpunk 2077. No surprise there. Whenever there's a big movie star on here, you gotta put them in there, especially when their character in game looks exactly like the actor. Melanie Liburd for Alan Wake 2. I'm gonna assume that is Saga. It has to be. Neil Newbon for Baldur's Gate 3, and then Yuri Lowenthal for Spider-Man 2. Shouts to Yuri Lowenthal. Absolutely everywhere, that man. Let's see. I guess this is another category where I've only played one of the games that pops in here. I think that Saga, great performance. I'm curious how I'd feel about that if there was actually other competition in here for me, if I'd played some of these other games. I mean, Idris Elba seems like he's kind of being himself, and obviously he's a great actor, so that makes sense. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Melanie here. Shout out to Alan Wake 2, another vote for me. And innovation in accessibility. So this is a tricky one for me because I don't know if I really utilize a lot of these kinds of features. The nominations are Diablo 4, Forza Motorsport, Hi-Fi Rush, Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6. So haven't played Street Fighter 6 or Spider-Man 2. I've played a good amount of Mortal Kombat 1 on the 24-hour stream. Hi-Fi Rush. I did play Forza Motorsport and Diablo 4 as well. Those haven't popped up yet as categories or in any of the other categories. Honestly, I don't feel qualified to answer this one. I think it would just be picking the one I want to win the most. But I don't think I'm passionate enough about this to want to put a vote down. So I'm gonna skip this one. If it was like a personal favorite for me, maybe like some under the radar indie, maybe I'd want to throw my vote on them to see it win. But I don't know if I have a horse in this race. So I'm just gonna leave that for more seasoned professionals on that category. Next up is Games for Impact, which, once again, the description of this one is for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. Usually a weird category, especially when we do our predictions, just because I feel like a lot of the games end up being ones that we've never heard of. Maybe it's like some phone game that we just aren't really paying attention to, and usually it's like one or two of the games I recognize. This is a weird case where I actually know all 6 of these games, and I've played half of them. That doesn't always happen, so it's interesting to see kind of maybe more popular games in the zeitgeist showing up here. So we have A Space for the Unbound, Chants of Sennaar, Goodbye Volcano High, Tchia, Terra Nil, and Venba. So I haven't played Chants of Sennaar. It looks really cool. It's on my backlog. I'd like to check it out at some point. I'm interested, curious that it showed up here, because just from seeing gameplay or trailers, I guess, not one I would have expected to appear as a Games for Impact. So that's cool. It makes me even more curious to see what that game is about narratively when I finally get around to it. Goodbye Volcano High. I've not played nor Tchia, though Tchia does look very fun as well. I'd like to check that one out. Goodbye Volcano High. I don't think that's really my type of game, so I don't see myself picking that one up. So it comes down to Space for the Unbound, Terra Nil, and Venba. Here's how I'm going to break this one down. Venba hit Game Pass recently. and I downloaded it and checked it out. It's a short game, and I was very excited for it because I like a cooking game and I like the kind of Indian families story, like that setup. It was compelling to me. The gameplay, it like immediately aggravated me when I played this game. I played for like 10 minutes. I was having to cook this meal and I didn't really know what to do. So I was like clicking on things and it's like, oh no, you don't do that step yet. Try something else. And then I clicked on this other thing and ended up clicking on like 5 different things in the room. There's not many things in this room. And like all of them were the wrong thing, I guess. And I was just like, I don't think I'm going to vibe with this gameplay wise. So I dipped immediately. So sorry to Venba. I didn't really get far enough to see what the story or the games for impact element of it could have been. So this is coming down to Space for the Unbound for me, Terra Nil. Terra Nil is a game I completed. I mean, there's all sorts of completionist stuff you can do there, but I played through all the main levels. Really enjoyed it. And I think the way it hits this category is that it's kind of like a reverse city builder in a way where you are taken to these wastelands and you're kind of rebuilding it using technology. You're like using this device that will like shoot water down here and fill this river up, or this thing that generates grass and then eventually bringing animals in. And then it has a really cool last step where after you've done all that, then you have to go around and delete out all of the tech that you put in there, all those machines. You have to pull them out, and that's very strategic. So a really cool game. Now, in terms of the story side of it, it is more subtle, right? There is no like dialogue or characters. So it obviously is, you're talking about reclaiming the earth or preservation of the environment, that sort of thing. But I think it's quite subtle in that way. Whereas a Space for the Unbound, this is a more or less a point and click story narrative adventure sort of game. And so I think in that way it gets to be a lot more front of face in terms of how it is that games for impact. I've talked about this category a lot longer than I thought I would. So for me, it's going to go for Space for the Unbound, a game I have not rolled credits on, which I do feel bad about. It's a lot longer than I thought it would be, and I haven't finished it only because I was playing it up until Starfield came out, and then I was all in on Starfield for like an entire month before I played anything else. So I would like to go back to it and finish it before the year is up. That one's for me. If it popped up in like art direction, I think that would have been my vote. I freaking love the look of that game. The music is amazing as well. So I wish it was in those categories because I would have voted for it there as well. But I really dig the story of Space for the Unbound. You're kind of going into people's minds and helping them solve issues. Meanwhile, like the world is going to shit and getting destroyed. It's a lot going on there, but a really beautiful game. So I definitely should go back to it, but it's getting my vote here for Games for Impact. That was spicier than I thought it would be. Normally that category, like I said, bit of a snoozer only because I haven't played the games in it. Best ongoing, we got Apex Legends, Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy 14. Yeah, sorry, the Roman numerals there. Fortnite and Genshin. So I don't play any of these games. I've actually never played Fortnite, or I did play like 10 minutes or maybe an hour of Genshin Impact. Played a little bit of Apex back in the day. Cyberpunk, it's cool to see that in ongoing because, of course, this is like DLC that was added to the game rather than it being a live service game. Once again, I don't think I have a horse in this race, so I'm just going to skip this category because I don't really play in these games, and the ones I have, I've not played this year, so I can't speak on the ways that they have been ongoing in that way. Similar looking list for community support. We got Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Final Fantasy 14, and No Man's Sky. Once again, I'm not going to vote here. I don't feel like I really have anything to go off of. So yeah, I'm going to leave that for the more studied people. Here's a couple of categories that I always love to see what makes it in here because there's always a million indie games that come out every year and tons of them go under the radar. But we got best indie game here, and then we're going to have debut indie afterwards. Debut being a studio's first release, indie game being just any indie game whatsoever, including potentially a debut. So it could be in both categories. Here we have Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder. I have not played Viewfinder. It looks cool, but I guess, I heard some people talk about it on a couple podcasts. I was like, that sounds cool, but I don't know if I need that. I don't know if I need to play that one. So maybe if it hits Game Pass or at some point, I'll jump and check it out. Dave the Diver, I've also not played either. I've heard there's a little bit of, maybe not controversy, but on the edge of controversy for Dave the Diver because it's not really an indie game. It looks and sounds and smells like an indie game, but it's like funded by like $1 billion company or something like that. So it's not really an indie game. But once again, these definitions, they don't really matter. The people voting on this, they either didn't know or they didn't care. And I honestly don't think I care too much either. Personally, I think I'm fine with it. So it's coming down to Cocoon, Dredge, Sea of Stars. Dredge, I'm not going to vote for it only because I actually played it last year when it was in the Steam Next Fest. And I think I did talk about it on Sidequest with Cooper back in one of those episodes. Really cool game. Really liked it. I think when the full game released, I was just busy with other games or something. That's why I didn't end up picking it up. But I'm glad to see it here. And it's not shocking to me. There was a very big indie game this year. A lot of people are talking about and praising that one. So not a shocker to see it here. So it's coming down to Cocoon and Sea of Stars. This actually is an easy vote for me. I've talked about Sea of Stars a ton on the podcast. Me and Kirkland have talked about it multiple times. I finally finished the game now, like 40 hours, got all the rainbow conches for people who have played the game. Fucking love that game. It is amazing. So good. Should have appeared in Best Music. Should have appeared in Best Art Direction. Honestly, should have been Game of the Year, like I said. I think it deserved that. But yeah, I absolutely love that game. I love Cocoon as well, but Sea of Stars is just a stronger all-around game for me. And this is also, I have a bit of foresight here because I've looked at what these nominees are previously. And I know that in the next category here of Best Debut Indie, we have, once again, Cocoon, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Venba, Viewfinder. So I haven't played Pizza Tower. It looks cool. I shared my thoughts on Venba and Dredge, and then Viewfinder I haven't played either. So this is a very easy vote for me, and I'm happy that I can vote for both Sea of Stars and Cocoon. I'm glad that they popped up, or Cocoon popped up in this category, because it is the studio's first effort. So yeah, very happy to vote for Cocoon. Love that game. Talked about it on Sidequest a couple weeks ago. It's on Game Pass. Play it. One of the best puzzle games I've ever played in my life. We're getting down to the nitty gritty here. We're on 10 of 31, but a lot of them are esports. Best mobile game: Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Honkai Star Rail, Monster Hunter Now, and Terra Nil. I've not played those first three. I did download and check out Monster Hunter Now. It is the Pokemon Go for Monster Hunter. Wasn't really my cup of tea. Terra Nil, I didn't play it mobile. I played it on my laptop. Well, I guess my laptop is a mobile thing. You know what? So I'm going to vote for Terra Nil here. So I'm glad that I maybe snubbed it earlier, but I can get a vote for it here because I do really enjoy that game. Really cool. We got Best VR AR. I'm not even going to read these off. I'm going to skip past it. I've never played VR in my life. That's a big blind spot for me, but it's very expensive tech. These games seem fun and all. It's not my bag. Best action game. I'm also a little bit of a loop on this one. We got Armored Core 6. That's the first time that game has popped up, which is surprising because From Software's last two game releases were Game of the Year winners, Elden Ring and Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Then we also have Dead Island 2, Ghost Runner 2, Hi-Fi Rush, and Remnant 2. Really, really want to play Dead Island 2. That looks like so much fun to me. I'm waiting for the right sale on it. I think that's when I'll finally check it out. I'm going to go for Hi-Fi Rush here. It's the only game I've played, so maybe it's a bit unfair. But, shouts to Hi-Fi Rush. It's getting my vote. And then we have Action Adventure is going to be the next one. Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Tears of the Kingdom. So the first time Star Wars has shown up, I guess that's another one of those games that was super good, but this is also just an incredibly strong year. I haven't played it yet. I've borrowed it from Taylor Field, so I have it in my living room right now. I don't know if I'll check it out this year, honestly. It might be slightly on my backlog. But then the rest of these we've talked about a lot already. Spider-Man, of course, removing my contention because I haven't played it. So it comes down to Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil 4, and Tears of the Kingdom. Since this is the action-adventure category, right, we're talking about action, which would be like, combat. We're also talking about adventure, traversal, and puzzle solving is what they use here in the description. So for me, as the all-arounder, I'm going to go with Resident Evil 4 because Alan Wake 2, I don't love the action of it, right? I love the adventure of it. I love the narrative. I love all those other categories I voted for it. And then Tears of the Kingdom, just once again, it's not as good as Alan Wake 2 or Resident Evil 4 just in general for me. So I'm going to have to go with one of those other two. And yeah, Resident Evil 4, I love the combat. I love the adventure of it. I did like the puzzles in the game. So yeah, that's a kind of an easy vote for me. I'm going to go with Resident Evil 4. And next up, we have Best RPG, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and Starfield. This is the one and only category that Starfield popped in, which was surprising to me. When I saw these categories come out, I just... I didn't think Starfield would win Game of the Year, don't get me wrong, but I thought it would have a bit more love for it than it ended up having. So looking at this list, of course, I haven't played the first three, so it's coming down to Sea of Stars or Starfield for me. And this is tricky. I love both these games. They're both very, very strong for me. When it comes down to this being the best RPG category, I think my vote is going to go on to Starfield because I love Sea of Stars and it is, a JRPG inspired game, Chrono Trigger E. But I think in terms of the RPG elements, it's not necessarily super in depth. You level up, you pick like one of 4 stats, you have like equipment. So there is definitely RPG elements to it, but I think that's intentionally not too obtuse of a system, whereas Starfield has all these ways to like build your characters. There's tons of skill trees, which I think is a really well done evolution of the skill tree system in that way. There are meaningful choices in the story in terms of who you side with. So Sea of Stars, I feel like it's a solid RPG, but it's maybe not reinventing the wheel, whereas I think Starfield actually had some really compelling RPG elements to it, between the stats, between the narrative stuff. So I'm going to go with Starfield here. Okay, next category we have is Best Fighting. God of Rock, a game I've never heard of. Pocket Bravery, a game I've never heard of. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, and Mortal Kombat 1 and Street Fighter 6. I love to see Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 make it in here. I haven't played the game yet. I think I might pick it up, though. The first one, I feel like this is the kind of game that will work perfectly as a sequel where they can improve on the things that need to be improved on from the first game, add more content and whatnot. In the same way that I wish Multiverses just came out like it did and they didn't like turn it off and they're going to like relaunch. Like I would have loved if they just had here, rather than some weird Seasons Pass thing for, oh my God, I just forgot the name of the game. Multiverses, I just said it. I wish that game just came out and then we got Multiverses 2 next year. And the way that Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl is doing it, I think that's way better. Here, give me like a $20, $30 game rather than the Battle Pass thing. I don't need to talk about that anymore than I just did. Mortal Kombat 1 is the only game I've played on this list, but I freaking had a great time playing on the 24-hour stream with everyone there. I talked about it on Sidequest as well with Kirkland recently, so had a great time with Mortal Kombat 1. This is an easy vote for me. And let's see here. Next up is Best Family. So we have Disney Illusion Island, Party Animals, Pikmin 4, Sonic Superstars, and Mario Wonder. So I've only played one of these games. I've only played Mario Wonder. I played Pikmin 1 and 2 this year, but not played 4. I guess I did play Party Animals, actually. I played a little bit of that. It's a kind of Fall Guys-like game, Gang Beasts similarities. Didn't love it as much as I was hoping for, and then didn't play the other platformers here. This, to me, is where Mario Wonder deserves to be, and I think it's an easy vote for me. It's a great family game. It's playing it with my partner. We're having a great time going through that together. And then we have Best Sim or Strategy. This is Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which I was just playing again the other day. It's just an evergreen title. There's so many levels in it to play endlessly. Cities Skylines 2. I didn't realize both those words were pluralized in that title. Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. So based on how I've talked about this on Sidequest, if you listen back to these episodes, you probably think this might be an easy vote for Fire Emblem Engage for me because I was very positive on it on the review, but I hadn't finished the game yet, and then there just became a turning point with it where I really bounced off and really didn't like some of the choices with the game, kind of getting into those later sections of it. So I think for me, I'm actually going to go with Advance Wars here. I don't think Fire Emblem, well, it's definitely not going to make it in my top 10 for the year. I was actually pretty disappointed with it. Once again, if you haven't listened to me before talk about this stuff, Fire Emblem is a series I love near and dear, and I've played every game released in North America for that series. Engage kind of let me down, but I love Advance Wars, and it was super fun to go back. Earlier this week, I was playing some, like I said. Just get back in. There's so many levels I still have to do. I really love the tactics of that game. So it's an easy vote for me. And we are on to sports and racing. We got EA Sports FC24, F1 23, Forza Motorsport, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, Turbocharged, and the Crew Motorfest. I've only played Motorsport here. It's not my kind of racing game. I don't think it's a bad game by any means. I don't really like the super simmy racing games. I like the more arcadey ones where we're going to smash into people like dirt, whereas you get like demerits in Motorsport if you do that kind of thing. Or I like a Mario Kart, that kind of more chaotic stuff. I guess, I don't know if I'm shocked by this, but yeah, Disney Speedstorm did not make it in the list here. And that I honestly probably would have voted for that because I had a really good time playing that game. I don't really like the way you unlock stuff in it, but it was a super fun racing game. But I'm not going to vote here. I've only played one, and it's not a game I particularly care about. So we're going to move on here to Best Multiplayer Game. We have Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 4, Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, Mario Wonder. So even though I mentioned that I really liked playing co-op with my partner, Mario Wonder, not going to give it this point here because I actually am bothered by a lot of the multiplayer elements, the way that stuff's implemented. Maybe the online's great. I haven't done any of that. So it's coming down to Diablo 4 or Party Animals for me as the two games that I've played. I'm actually going to go with Diablo 4 here because it was, even though I'd bounced off this game after not too long, mostly because of tech issues, just doesn't run super well on my laptop. It was so much fun just having a game that all my friends were playing again. We were just in Discord servers constantly talking about the game, talking about the new updates, playing together, jumping in each other's matches, and all that stuff worked very well and seamlessly. So I'm happily going to vote for Diablo 4 here. And then we have Best Adaptation, Castlevania Nocturne, Gran Turismo, Last of Us, Mario movie, and Twisted Metal. So I've only watched Last of Us and the Mario movie, and I love both of them. I really, really enjoyed both of these. Both the TV show for Last of Us, a game that I could never really get into, but I loved the show, and then the Mario movie, which of course is just so nostalgic for me, even though it's a new movie. But it's a very fanboy kind of thing. But like, I think I'm gonna go with the Mario movie. I feel like in terms of quality and story and acting, like of course I'd go with Last of Us, but for the hype of it, I'm going with the Mario movie. You know what? I fucking love that movie. I can't wait to rewatch it and get into the Golden Geeks best movie nominees list. But that's where I'm going for today. Then we have most anticipated. So I think this is our last game category. The rest of them might be esports. We'll see. We have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Hades 2, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Star Wars Outlaws, and Tekken 8. Kind of a weird list for me. I don't know. I guess I'd have to think about what are like bigger, more anticipated games for me personally, but kind of a surprising list. Tekken 8, I don't really care much about that. I'm actually very shocked that made it in the list. I guess it's had a lot of betas and I don't know, play sessions, so people have played the game and maybe that's why it's up here because it's very solid or something. Star Wars Outlaws, looks cool enough, but I need to see a lot more before I get too hyped on it. Haven't played Hades 1's, of course, a big blind spot for me, so Hades 2 not a shocker here because that one game of the year. In the year it came out. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and Final Fantasy Rebirth are weird ones where I'm not really players of those series, but the trailers for both those games look absolutely fantastic. I think I might pick up both these games. Final Fantasy VII, maybe not just because I feel like I would need to go back and play that first one and then get the DLC, and I don't have a PS5 yet. Whereas Like a Dragon, I've not played any of those games ever, but that trailer that I saw at, I guess, the Summer Game Fest just blew me away. I was super stoked on it. So I'm gonna go with Like a Dragon here. I think it's kind of a coin toss between Final Fantasy and Yakuza, but I'm gonna go with Like a Dragon for today. And like I said, that might be it. Arena, the esports stuff, content creator. I don't know any of these people. Esports game. I think I'm not going to read through all these lists because I'm just going to go through them very quickly. I'm going to go with Counter-Strike 2. It's a game that has a lot of issues so far, and I don't like the way it was launched necessarily, but I have had a lot of fun playing it still. Esports athlete. I'm just going to go for the CSGO guy because shouts to CSGO. Zaiwu, he's a cool player. Best esports team. I'm going to go with Fnatic here. I've always liked that org. I'm very quickly going through these. I think that's okay. I'm going to go with Zonic here for Counter-Strike. He's awesome. Great coach. And what else do we got here? Esports event. I don't think I watched any of these. Did I watch the Blast TV Major? I think that's the CS one, right? Whatever. I'm not going to vote for that. Okay, so okay. I think I was wrong on my votes. The only reason I was not looking as far along as I am is because I didn't vote on a few categories. So that was actually the last one. Esports event was the final one. I don't think I'm going to put a vote on it. But yeah, 24 out of 31 votes I put mine on. Feeling good about that decision. I don't really want to put I wasn't too passionate about any of those ones that I didn't vote for in terms of like, oh, I need to see this game win. So curious to see how those go. But that's going to do it for me here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Once again, tune into our official predictions episode with me and the rest of the crew. This was fun to do. Let me know if you want to see more of this in the future. Let me know what your picks are for some of these, or at least in the bigger categories. And yeah, very excited to watch the Game Awards. We already know there's going to be big trailers there for GTA 6 and I'm sure a bunch of other big things. So it should be a very fun event when that happens on like whatever it is, December 7th or 10th or some date like that. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.